Have you ever wondered, looking at the screen of your smartphone, who wrote the code that forces these pixels to assemble into meaningful images? You know that behind every icon, behind every menu transition, lie millions of lines of program code written by thousands of engineers. You intuitively understand. If you throw a piece of silicon and plastic into a blender and shake it for 1 billion years, a working iPhone will not fall out. This is obvious. This is common sense. But when it comes to us, biological machines whose complexity exceeds any human technology by billions of times, we are asked to believe the opposite. We are told it is an accident, a mistake, the result of chaotic Brownian motion of molecules in a warm puddle. Greetings. We are beginning the most massive investigation in the history of our channel. We are going to hack the source code of reality. Today we will not talk about philosophy or religion. We will speak the language of the only objective truth available to our minds, the language of mathematics and information theory. We loaded a massive data set describing the fundamental basis of life into our analytical system, Logos 7. We asked this artificial intelligence free from human prejudice and academic dogma to calculate just one thing. What is the probability that life on Earth arose by chance? The answer the system produced forced us to rethink everything we knew about our origins. Chapter 1. Protocol. Impossibility. Let's go back to the beginning, to what biology textbooks call the primordial soup. The official scientific doctrine taught to us from school days states, about 4 billion years ago, unique conditions formed on a lifeless Earth. In an ocean saturated with chemical elements, lightning struck, volcanoes erupted, and under the influence of energy, non-living matter suddenly became alive. Molecules accidentally combined into amino acids accidentally lined up into proteins, and proteins accidentally formed the first living cell. It sounds romantic, but let's look at this through the eyes of a programmer. What is a living cell? Darwin in the 19th century thought it was just a lump of protoplasm, something like jelly. But today, thanks to electron microscopes, we know the truth. Even the simplest bacterial cell is not jelly. It is a nanotechnology factory of incredible complexity. It has its own power plants producing energy, its own defense systems, transport highways, waste recycling plants, data archives, and most importantly, automated assembly lines that copy themselves. The Logos 7 system analyzed the structure of the simplest living cell and compared its complexity to a modern metropolis like New York. The conclusion is unequivocal. The level of organization inside the cell is higher. Now imagine that this metropolis built itself without blueprints or architects, simply because the wind blew on a garbage dump of construction materials. Let's dive into the numbers. The basis of life is proteins. A protein is a long chain consisting of amino acids. In nature, there are over 300 types of amino acids, but only 20 are used to build life. For a protein to work, these 20 types of amino acids must line up in a strictly defined sequence. It is like letters in a sentence. If you write letters in a random order, you get gibberish. To get the phrase, to be or not to be, the letters must be in their places. An average protein consists of about 200 amino acids. We gave Logos 7 the task of calculating the probability of the random assembly of a single functional protein just 150 amino acids long from the primordial soup. The algorithm began iterating through the variants. We have 20 options for the first spot, 20 for the second, 20 for the third, and so on, 150 times. That is 20 to the power of 150. Logos 7 produced the result. The probability that just one working protein assembles by chance is 1 in 10 to the power of 164. 1 in 10, 164. 1 in 10, 164. Do you understand what this number is? Let me give you the scale. In the entire observable universe, from edge to edge, there are only 10 to the power of 80. 10, 80, 10, 80 elementary particles. There are fewer atoms in the universe than there are ways to assemble one incorrect protein. If every particle in the universe were a separate experiment, and these experiments were conducted every second since the Big Bang, we still wouldn't have enough time to randomly obtain even one correct sequence. Mathematicians call events with a probability of less than 1 in 10 to the power of 50. 10, 50, 10, 50. Impossible. This is Emile Borel's law. In our case, we are dealing with a probability of 1 in 10 to the power of 164. From the point of view of mathematical statistics, this is not just unlikely. It is absolute zero. It cannot happen. Never. Nowhere. But that's not all. We loaded another variable into Logos 7, one that proponents of spontaneous generation often remain silent about. This is the problem of chirality. In chemistry, molecules can have two forms, left-handed and right-handed. It's like your hands, left and right gloves. They are mirror images. When amino acids are synthesized in a laboratory as a result of random reactions, a mixture is always obtained. 50% left and 50% right. This is a law of chemistry. The mixture is called a race mate. However, when we look at living organisms, we see a shocking anomaly. All proteins in all living beings on Earth, from bacteria to humans, are built exclusively from left-handed amino acids. Not a single right one. If even one right amino acid gets into the protein chain, the structure will collapse, and life will perish. Imagine you have a bag of coins. You pour them onto the table. By the law of probability, roughly half will land heads, half tails. But in the case of life, someone poured out billions of coins, and absolutely all of them landed one side up. We asked Logos 7, what is the probability of obtaining a chain of 150 exclusively left amino acids in a random chemical reaction? The system's answer was categorical. It is equivalent to tossing a coin 150 times in a row and getting heads every time. And this must be done for every molecule of every protein in the body. Without a selection mechanism, without Maxwell's demon sorting molecules, this is impossible. Someone or something had to filter the building material before construction began. This is no longer chance. This is intent. But let's go further. A protein is just a brick. For the existence of the most primitive living cell, not just one protein is needed, but a minimum of 239 different proteins working together. And they must appear simultaneously. Why simultaneously? Because life cannot wait. If you have a heart but no lungs, the organism will die. If there is a cell membrane but no mechanism for obtaining energy, it will disintegrate. Logos 7 ran a simulation of stepwise evolution at the molecular level. Result: system failure. The cell must arise immediately, fully equipped. Otherwise, it will not survive a second. This is called irreducible complexity. Sir Fred Hoyle, the famous British astronomer and mathematician, once said a phrase that became legendary. He compared the probability of the random origin of life to the probability that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard would accidentally assemble a fully flight-ready Boeing 747 from the debris. We decided to test this analogy. We entered the parameters of the junkyard, primordial soup, and the parameters of the Boeing, simplest cell, into Logos 7. The system ran millions of iterations of virtual time. The system's conclusion is frightening in its precision. For the random assembly of the minimal set of proteins for the simplest life, more time is required than our universe has existed. If the universe were 1 billion times older, that time would still not be enough. Logos 7 displayed an entropy graph. The second law of thermodynamics states that all systems in the universe tend toward chaos. Order spontaneously collapses. A car rusts. A building decays. A corpse decomposes. Never, under any conditions, do we observe the reverse process, rust assembling into a car, or dust assembling into a computer. The spontaneous generation of life is a flagrant violation of the second law of thermodynamics. It is as if you blew up a printing press, and the falling letters assembled themselves into the full text of the Encyclopedia Britannica without a single typo. But the most important proof lies not in chemistry, but in information. And here we come to the core of our investigation. Life is not just matter. It is information. DNA is code. This is not a metaphor, not a pretty analogy. It is a literal fact. In the nucleus of every one of your cells, an instruction 3.5 billion characters long is written. Think about this. If you are walking along a beach and see John plus Kate written in the sand, you know that a mind created this inscription. Waves could create beautiful patterns. Wind could blow dunes. But neither wind nor waves can create information. Information always, absolutely always, has an intelligent source. We asked Logos 7, can information arise from matter without the participation of a mind? The system scanned all known physical processes. Answer, no. Matter can be a carrier of information, like paper for a book or silicon for a chip, but matter does not create information. Ink and paper do not write poems. A poet writes poems. DNA is the densest and most complex data storage system in the universe. In one pinhead of DNA, you could record all the information accumulated by humanity in digital form. And we are asked to believe that this perfect software code wrote itself? This is like believing that the Windows operating system arose by itself due to a voltage spike in the network. Logos 7 completed the analysis of the first stage of the investigation. The system's verdict is unambiguous. The hypothesis of the random origin of life, abiogenesis, is mathematically untenable. The probability of this event is below statistical error. We face a fact that science is afraid to admit aloud. At the basis of life lies a program, and where there is a program, there's always a programmer. Official science tries to patch this hole with the multiverse hypothesis. They say, yes, in our universe this is impossible, but maybe there are an infinite number of universes, and we were just lucky to be in the one where the winning ticket came up. This is the classic survivor bias. This is an attempt to explain a miracle through the infinite multiplication of entities. But even if you have an infinite number of monkeys at typewriters, they will never write Hamlet. Logos 7 proved this when analyzing linguistic patterns. Monkeys will type a meaningless set of letters because they have no intention to convey meaning. But in DNA, there is meaning. There is syntax, grammar, and commands. Who wrote this code? Who is the architect that launched the compilation of the first protein? We have only begun our dive. What we discovered next is even more shocking. DNA is not just a chemical formula. It is a language. And like any language, it has its rules, punctuation marks, and even protection against hacking. In the next chapter, we will dissect the very structure of this language. We will see that DNA uses a 4-digit digital code that surpasses anything created by Silicon Valley programmers in its logic. We will prove that this code was written to be read. But who is supposed to be the recipient of this message? We will hack the language of 4 letters. Stay with us, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what Logos 7 found in the hidden layers of the genome. The truth is somewhere in the code. Chapter 2. The language of 4 letters. Imagine a situation. Our radio telescopes, scanning the sky in search of extraterrestrial intelligence, suddenly pick up a signal from the Andromeda Nebula. It is not just white noise and not the pulsation of a star. It is a clear, repeating sequence of pulses, a long, complex string of data. Scientists all over the world rush to decode it. And suddenly they realize this is not just a mathematical series, it is a text. It is an instruction. It is a blueprint. At that moment, every person on earth, from skeptic to believer, will say, "We are not alone. This is a message from an intelligence." No one in their right mind would say that radio waves accidentally assembled into a blueprint for a starship due to a magnetic storm. But here is the paradox. We found exactly such a text, exactly such a blueprint, and exactly such an instruction, not in distant space, but inside each of us, in every cell of your body. And official science, looking at this incredibly complex code, continues to chant the mantra, "There is no author here. It is an accident." Welcome to the second chapter of our investigation. Today we will analyze DNA not as a chemical molecule, but as what it truly is, as a linguistic system, as a language. We loaded the complete structure of the genome into our analytical system, Logos 7. We gave the artificial intelligence a task: analyze DNA from the perspective of cryptography and information theory. We asked the system, is this just a set of chemical reactions, or is it a message? The system's answer is unequivocal. DNA possesses all, absolutely all, the characteristics of a human language or high-level computer code. Let's figure out what this means. At the heart of any digital technology we use lies binary code, 0 and 1, signal, no signal. All photos, videos, games, and texts in your computer are just giant sequences of zeros and ones. DNA uses a more advanced system. It is a quaternary code. Instead of 2 digits, there are 4 letters: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. In biology, they are designated by the Latin letters A, T, G, and C. For simplicity, we will call them the letters of the genetic alphabet. The first thing Logos 7 discovered during comparative analysis, the efficiency of information coding in DNA is much higher than in our silicon electronics. If binary code is base 2, then DNA is base 4. This allows data to be recorded with a density we can only dream of. But we will talk about that in the next chapter. Right now, we are interested in structure. Any language, be it Russian, English, or the Python programming language, stands on 3 pillars. These are syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. If even one of these elements is missing, the language does not exist. Let's check DNA against these 3 points together with the Logos 7 system. The first level is syntax. These are the rules of grammar. This is the order of letters. In English, you cannot put letters in absolutely any order. Window is a word. Window is nonsense. In a programming language, if you forget to put a semicolon or close a bracket incorrectly, the program will not run. This is a syntax error. Rigid syntactic rules exist in DNA. Letters must follow a specific order to make sense. Moreover, they are grouped into words. These words always consist of exactly 3 letters. They are called codons, or triplets. System Logos 7 scanned billions of base pairs and confirmed. DNA is read strictly by 3 letters, not by 2, not by 4, but by 3. For example, the sequence GCA is a word. CGT is another word. In total, 64 such 3-letter words can be formed from 4 letters. This is the dictionary of life. 64 codons. This is not chaos. This is the strictest grammar. Who established the rule that words must consist of exactly 3 letters? Why not 5? Chemistry does not forbid other combinations. But the code works only in 3s. This is a rule of software, not chemistry. The second level is semantics, and here begins the most interesting part. Semantics is meaning. The word table means a piece of furniture. The combination of sounds, table itself, does not look like a table. A wooden table has nothing in common with the spelling of this word. The connection between the word and the object is arbitrary. We humans agreed that this sound means this object. This is called convention. In DNA, every codon, every 3-letter word, has a specific meaning. It encodes one of 20 amino acids. For example, the word GCA means the amino acid alanine. The word GTC means valine. Think about this. Between the chemical substance cytosine guanine adenine and the chemical substance alanine, there is no physical or chemical connection. They are not attracted to each other like a magnet and iron. They are chemically indifferent to each other. The link between the code in DNA and the amino acid it calls for is purely informational. It is an agreement. Someone decided that GCA would mean alanine. Someone compiled this code table. We asked Logos 7 a question. Can semantic meaning arise by itself as a result of physical laws? The system's answer, probability, is 0. Physics describes interactions of matter. Semantics describes the transfer of meaning. Matter does not birth meaning. Meaning is always assigned by a mind. If you see a red traffic light, you stop. Not because the red bulb physically presses the brake of your car, but because you know the rule. Red means stop. Such rules are written in DNA, and molecular machines inside the cell obey them. The third level is pragmatics. This is action. Information in DNA does not just lie as dead weight. It incites action. It tells the cell, take this amino acid, connect it with that one, then add this one, fold the chain, and make hemoglobin. This is an imperative programming language. It is a set of commands. Logos 7 drew an analogy with computer code. In the genome, there are start and stop commands. Imagine that. There are special codons that do not encode amino acids but work as punctuation marks. They tell the molecular machine, the ribosome, start reading here and stop reading here. The protein is ready. Cut the thread. How can a chemical molecule know that this is the end of the sentence? It cannot. Only a system configured to read this code knows this. Norbert Wiener, the father of cybernetics, said, information is information, not matter or energy. Materialism, which tries to explain everything only by the interaction of atoms, suffers a complete collapse when faced with a DNA, because DNA is the carrier, but the code is the message. If I write, I love you on paper and send you a letter, the paper is matter, the ink is matter, but the message itself, the meaning of love, is not material. You cannot weigh meaning. You cannot find the chemical formula of meaning. It is exactly the same with DNA. Sugar and phosphates are the paper, nitrogenous bases are the ink. But the instruction for assembling an eye or a brain is non-material information recorded on a material carrier. Where did this information come from? In information theory, there's a fundamental law formulated by Claude Shannon. Any communication system consists of a source, an encoder, a channel, a decoder, and a receiver. In a living cell, there are all these elements. DNA is the encoded message. mRNA, messenger RNA, is the channel, the carrier. The ribosome is the decoder that translates the language of DNA into the language of proteins. Protein is the receiver, the finished product. But where is the source? Where is the one who generated the message? System Logos 7 analyzed the structure of this information flow. The conclusion is stunning. For the system to work, the sender and receiver must agree on the language in advance. Imagine I send you a file in .zip format. If you don't have an archiver installed on your computer that knows this format, you will see just garbage, a set of gibberish. For information transfer to take place, the code must exist before the first message is sent. The ribosome, decoder, must already know the genetic code to read DNA. But the ribosome itself is built according to instructions recorded in DNA. This is a vicious circle. The code could not have evolved gradually. Half a code is an unreadable code. If you swap letters in a computer program, it won't work slightly worse. It will stop working altogether. The system will crash. The genetic code is universal. This is another fact our analysis uncovered. Almost all living beings on Earth, from mold to elephants, from viruses to humans, use the same programming language, the same code table. GCA means alanine in us, in the bacteria in your gut, and in a banana. Evolutionists say this proves common descent from one ancestor. But a programmer will tell you something else. This proves a single developer. It's as if you discovered that all programs in the world, from a calculator to a nuclear reactor control system, are written in the same language. For example, Java. What would you think? That the calculator gradually turned into a reactor? Or that this is an industry standard set by the creator of this ecosystem? Logos 7 compared the genetic code to the best programming languages created by humanity. The result is humiliating for us. The genetic code possesses a degree of optimization and noise resistance that our IT specialists are still far from achieving. For example, DNA code is degenerate. This is a scientific term. It means that the same amino acid can be encoded by several different codons. This is a brilliant error protection system. If a glitch occurs during copying and one letter in the third position is replaced, the meaning often remains the same. The protein won't be ruined. Who provided for this protection? Chance. Chance does not build security systems. Chance destroys them. We come to an inevitable conclusion. The four-letter language of DNA is not a metaphor. It is a real, objectively existing digital code. It possesses syntax, grammar, punctuation, and semantic meaning. When you see writing on a cave wall, even if it's just Vasya was here, you know that a mind was here. You don't write it off as wind erosion. But DNA is not Vasya was here. It is the Library of Congress, compressed to the size of a microscopic drop. Bill Gates once said, "DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created." If the creator of Microsoft admits it is a program, why should we believe it wrote itself? But this is only the tip of the iceberg. In the next chapter, we will go even deeper. We will talk about how this information is packaged. We are used to being proud of our hard drives and flash drives. We think a terabyte of data in a pocket is a miracle of technology. But Logos 7 conducted a comparative analysis of data recording density in DNA versus humanity's most advanced devices. What we saw makes us feel like savages with stone axes. Are you ready to find out how much information fits in a teaspoon of DNA? Are you ready to learn that the supermind used archiving technologies that are thousands of years ahead of ours? In the next chapter, Architecture, Compression. We will see that God is not only a programmer, but the greatest engineer. Don't switch channels. The truth is recorded in you, and we have only just begun to read it. Chapter 3, Architecture, Compression. We live in the era of big data. Every day, humanity generates 2.5 quintillion bytes of information. Your photos, messages, bank transactions, YouTube videos, scientific satellite data, all of this flows into a giant digital ocean. To store this colossal volume, we build cyclopean structures, data centers, huge hangars the size of football fields, packed with humming servers, devouring gigawatts of electricity and requiring powerful cooling systems. We are proud of these achievements. We believe that our progress in data storage is exponential. Moore's Law, solid-state drives, cloud technologies. It seems to us that we have reached the pinnacle of engineering thought, but we are mistaken. Our investigation, conducted with the help of the analytical system Logos 7, showed, compared to the technologies hidden inside your body, our best servers are Sumerian clay tablets. Welcome to the third chapter. Today we will talk about architecture, about how the supermind solved the data storage problem that is currently beyond our reach. We will talk about compression. We set a simple technical task for the Logos 7 system: Compare the efficiency of the most advanced hard drive created by man and the DNA molecule. We loaded parameters for recording density, energy efficiency, and durability. The result generated by the algorithm looks like a calculation error. The gap between our technologies and the creator's technology is not times, not percentages, but orders of magnitude. Millions and billions of times. Let's start with recording density. Imagine a modern hard drive with a capacity of 1 terabyte. It is a complex device weighing about 100 grams, stuffed with electronics and magnets. Now imagine that we can record the same volume of data, 1 terabyte, into DNA. Do you know how much space that will take? Logos 7 performed the calculation. 1 gram of DNA can theoretically hold 455 exabytes of information. To give you a scale, 1 exabyte is a billion gigabytes. 455 billion gigabytes in 1 gram of substance. Let me translate this into understandable imagery. If we wanted to record absolutely all information created by humanity throughout history, all books, all movies, all songs, all internet databases, absolutely everything we know, we wouldn't need endless fields of servers. We wouldn't need warehouses. Humanity's entire digital heritage would fit in 1 teaspoon of DNA, and there would still be free space left. Just think about this fact. 1 teaspoon versus millions of square kilometers of servers. This is technology that is ahead of our civilization, not by decades, but by thousands of years. This is the limit of the physical possibilities of matter. Computer scientists know about the so-called Shannon limit. This is the theoretical maximum density of information that can be transmitted or stored without loss. We, humans, are only approaching this limit in our best laboratories. DNA has been working at this limit for billions of years. System Logos 7 analyzed the recording structure and concluded, DNA uses 3-dimensional coding. A hard drive's are 2-dimensional plates. Data is written on a plane. DNA is a helix, a volumetric structure where information is packed into every atom of space. But density is only half the miracle. The second half is the packaging architecture itself. And here we encounter an engineering solution that makes the world's best programmers feel like amateurs. The problem of the long tape. If you stretch the DNA from a single cell of your body into 1 thread, its length will be approximately 2 meters. 2 meters of the thinnest thread. Now imagine that this 2-meter thread needs to be packed into the nucleus of a cell. The size of the cell nucleus averages 6 micrometers. That is 6/1000ths of a millimeter. The task: stuff a thread 2 meters long into a ball 6 micrometers in diameter. Logos 7 calculated the compression ratio. It is equivalent to taking a thin fishing line 40 kilometers long and tightly packing it inside a tennis ball. But this is not just a stuff-it-in task. It is an archive with instant access task. Imagine you crumpled 40 kilometers of fishing line into a ball, and now you urgently need to find a specific 1 centimeter section on this line, read it, and not tangle the rest. If you just crumple the line, you will never find anything. It will be a useless ball of nuts. But DNA in the nucleus is not tangled. It is organized. Logos 7 modeled this process and revealed a multi-level archiving system resembling a computer file system, but in 3D. Level 1, the DNA strand wraps around special protein spools. They are called histones. Imagine spools for thread. DNA makes exactly 1 3/4 turns around each spool. Not 2, not 1.5, but strictly 1.75 turns. Why such precision? Because this is the optimal tension for rapid reading. Level 2. These spools with threads, nucleosomes, coil into a spiral, forming a thicker thread, a chromatin fiber. It's like a telephone cord that is itself twisted into a spiral. Level 3. This spiral folds into loops. Level 4. The loops twist into supercoils. And finally, Level 5. All of this is tightly packed into what we see under a microscope as a chromosome. This is fractal archiving, compression within compression, 10,000 times over. But the most amazing thing Logos 7 discovered is the dynamics of this system. It is not a static archive covered in dust. It is a living library. When a cell needs to read an instruction, for example, to produce insulin, it does not unpack the entire archive. That would take too much time and energy. Special molecular robots find the necessary section in this monstrously dense packaging, unwind only the necessary histone spool, open access to the code, read it, and immediately, instantly, the spool winds back. This is called random access memory. What we are so proud of in our computers, RAM, is implemented here at the molecular level with efficiency close to 100%. We asked, Logos 7, could such a packaging system arise by chance? Imagine throwing a long wire into a drawer. It tangles. A Gordian knot forms. Entropy always tends to tangle long threads. This is a law of physics. To keep a thread 40 kilometers long compressed into a tennis ball from tangling and make it available for reading at any point in any millisecond, a complex engineering construction of spools, frames, and motors is needed. The probability of self-assembly of such an archiving system is 0. This is an engineering project. Now let's talk about energy efficiency. The internet today consumes about 10% of the world's electricity. Servers heat up. They need air conditioners. Data is expensive. DNA stores information at room temperature. It doesn't need gigawatts of energy. Energy consumption to store 1 bit of information in DNA is billions of times lower than in the most modern flashcards. This is green technology of the absolute level. The creator of this system solved the energy crisis problem before it even arose. And finally, the most painful question for us, durability. How long does your data live? A hard drive might fail in 5 years. A flash drive will die in 10. Optical discs, CD, DVD, rot. Paper crumbles after a few centuries. We are losing our history. We live in an era of digital amnesia. Formats change. Media decay. Now look at DNA. In 2013, scientists decoded the genome of an ancient horse that lived 700,000 years ago. Its bones lay in permafrost for almost 1 million years. And we can still read the code. DNA is an incredibly stable molecule. If dried and stored in a cool, dark place, it can preserve information for hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years. Logos 7 compared the service life of silicon media and biological media. The system's conclusion sounds like a verdict on our pride. Human technologies are designed for temporary data operation. DNA technology is designed for eternal storage. Someone created a medium capable of surviving civilizations, ice ages, and geological catastrophes. It resembles a plane's black box. A black box is made the most durable to survive a crash. Our genome is a black box designed to carry information through epochs. But what exactly is so important to preserve? Why such redundant reliability? We are approaching an interesting point. In computer science, there is the concept of redundancy. Did you know that most of your genome is not used to build the body? Scientists formerly arrogantly called this junk DNA. They thought it was evolutionary debris. But Logos 7 shows us a completely different picture. This is not junk. These are system files. These are backup copies. And possibly, these are encrypted messages that we cannot read yet. Compression of information in DNA is so dense that overlapping genes are used. Imagine reading a book. You read a sentence from left to right and get one meaning. In the beginning was the Word. Now imagine reading the exact same letters, but starting from the second letter, or reading from right to left, and getting a completely different but also meaningful text. This is called overlapping. In programming, This is the highest level of code optimization. In DNA, the same sequence of letters can encode several different proteins, depending on where reading starts. Our programmers try to avoid this because it is incredibly difficult to debug. Any change of one letter can break 2 or 3 programs at once. But the DNA architects use this technique everywhere. This suggests that the intelligence that wrote this code possessed computational powers exceeding the combined mind of all humanity. It could hold multi-dimensional connections and dependencies in its head that are difficult for us even to visualize. So, what do we have by the end of the 3rd chapter? We discovered a data storage device that has a recording density millions of times higher than anything created by humans, uses a 3D archiving system with instant access, which has no analogs in our technology, works with almost no energy expenditure, is capable of storing information for hundreds of thousands of years. System Logos 7 categorically rejects the possibility that such architecture came together by trial and error. Random mutations do not create compression algorithms. Chaos does not birth archives. This is technology. Highly advanced, incredibly complex, elegant technology. And here, a question arises. Any complex system, any database is prone to errors. Radiation, chemical attacks, ultraviolet light, all of this constantly bombards our cells, trying to break DNA chains, erase information, introduce chaos. Ideally, life should have disappeared after a couple of generations due to the accumulation of critical errors. Data should have degraded. The file should have become corrupted. But we are alive. Life has flourished for billions of years. Why? Because a perfect antivirus is built into this perfect hard drive. DNA has a system that checks data integrity and repairs it in real time. This is the topic of our next chapter. Chapter 4. Algorithm. Error correction. We will learn how your cells engage in mathematical analysis, calculate checksums, and cut out damaged sections of code, inserting correct patches in their place. We will prove that this repair system must have existed from the very beginning, otherwise the very first cell would have died of cancer. Prepare yourselves. We are about to look into the workshop where your body's automated support service works. Stay tuned for updates. The truth is recorded inside you, and it is much more complex than you were told. Chapter 4. Algorithm. Error correction. Anyone who has ever faced a computer breakdown knows this unpleasant feeling. You are working on an important document and suddenly, blue screen, system failure, file corrupted, data lost. In the world of digital technologies, errors are inevitable. A magnetic storm, a voltage spike, physical wear of the disk, and a bit of information turns from a 1 into a 0. Text turns into gibberish. The program stops working. To fight this, programmers create verification systems, checksums, hashes, backups. These are complex algorithms that constantly ask the system, "Are you okay? Is your data intact?" And if the answer is no, a recovery procedure is launched. But what if I told you that inside every one of your cells works a cybersecurity system compared to which the Pentagon's protection is a holy fence? What if I told you that your organism repels thousands of attacks on your genetic code every second, and you don't even feel it? Welcome to the 4th chapter of our investigation. Today, we will dissect the algorithm error correction. We will prove that life could not have arisen by chance because without this protection, it would have disappeared faster than it managed to appear. We gave the Logos 7 system a task. Analyze the threats the DNA molecule faces in real conditions. The list turned out to be frightening. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun, Earth's radiation background, free radicals, aggressive molecules formed during our own breathing, carcinogens from food and air, thermal noise. All of this continuously bombards your cells. According to Logos 7 data, up to 1 million DNA lesions occur in every cell of the human body daily. 1 million times a day. In every cell. And we have 30 trillion cells. Imagine a library where 1,000,000 vandals tear out pages, cross out words, and swap letters every day. In a week, only a pile of waste paper would remain of the library. If DNA were just a chemical molecule floating in primordial soup, it would disintegrate in a matter of hours. Information would be erased. Entropy would win. But you are alive. You are healthy. You pass your genes to children. How is this possible? The answer lies in a mechanism biologists call DNA repair. And we, from the point of view of computer science, call it Automated Data Recovery System. Logos 7 modeled the work of this system. It resembles the work of an emergency response team at a nuclear power plant. As soon as damage occurs, for example, UV light glued two letters, T, thymine, together, creating a read error, special sensor proteins instantly detect the accident. They literally scan the DNA thread, sliding along it like a flaw detector along rails, looking for distortions in the helix shape. As soon as an error is found, the sensor sends an alarm signal. A repair crew, a complex of several enzymes, rushes to the scene of the accident. What do? It is pure surgery, or if you prefer, video editing. An enzyme nuclease, scissors, cuts out the damaged piece of the chain. It removes not only the spoiled letter, but also several neighboring ones, for reliability. A hole is formed, a gap in the code. Then comes another enzyme, DNA polymerase, builder. It looks at the second intact strand of the helix. DNA is a double helix after all. This is the ingenious backup system. Information is duplicated on the second strand in mirror image. Opposite A always stands T. Opposite G always stands C. The polymerase reads the intact strand, and by the rule of complementarity, restores the lost piece. It inserts the correct letters. And finally, the third enzyme, ligase, glue, stitches the ends, sealing the break. That's it. The accident is liquidated. The code is restored to the bit. And this happens millions of times a second in your body, right now, while you are listening to this text. But the most striking thing Logos 7 discovered is the complexity and coordination of these mechanisms. There isn't just one, but several types of repair. There is base excision repair for minor breakdowns, one letter. There is nucleotide excision repair for major damage causing helix distortion, for example from the sun. There is double-strand break repair. This is when both strands tear at once. This is a catastrophe comparable to a server crash. If not fixed, the cell will die or become cancerous. But even here, there is a rescue system. Special proteins grab the ends of the torn DNA, hold them so they don't fly apart, and stitch them back together. We asked Logos 7 the key question of our investigation. Could this system have arisen evolutionarily, gradually? Official science says, first a simple replicator molecule arose, it copied itself, sometimes made mistakes, mistakes were useful, and so, step by step, over millions of years, complex repair proteins appeared. But Logos 7 shows the logical error of this theory. It is a classic Catch-22 paradox. For life to evolve, it must exist. For it to exist, it must preserve its information. To preserve information in an aggressive environment, an error correction system is needed. But the error correction system itself is recorded in DNA. The instruction for creating repair proteins is located in the very code that these proteins are supposed to guard. Without DNA, there are no repair proteins. Without repair proteins, there is no DNA. It will break down faster than it can reproduce. The system must be complete from the very first moment. The very first living cell on Earth was already obligated to have a repair mechanism. Otherwise, It would have simply burned up from ultraviolet light or disintegrated from chemical reactions. Imagine you created the world's first computer, but it has no case, no fan, and no surge protection. You plug it into an outlet. Bam! It burned out. You don't have time for evolution. You don't have millions of years. Protection must be built into the base configuration. Logos 7 ran a simulation. What happens if genes responsible for repair are removed from the genome? Result: instantaneous accumulation of mutations, error catastrophe, death of the population in a few generations. There are rare genetic diseases in humans where these mechanisms break. For example, xeroderma pigmentosum. Such people cannot go out in the sun. Their skin is instantly covered with burns and tumors. They are doomed. This proves that life without a protection system is impossible. Therefore, the protection system could not develop gradually. It was designed and implemented simultaneously with the code itself. This is called irreducible complexity, a term Darwinists dislike so much, but which perfectly describes the engineering reality of the cell. And one more nuance our analysis revealed. The DNA repair system demonstrates signs of foresight. It knows what is correct and what is an error. In chemistry, there's no concept of error. If acid corrodes metal, this is not an error, it is just a reaction. Chemistry is blind. But repair proteins know what DNA should look like. They compare the current state with a standard. Where do blind molecules get knowledge about the standard? Where do they get the goal to preserve information integrity? Goal setting is a property of reason. A programmer writes code and writes an error handler because he wants the program to work. He foresees possible failures. Nature has no desires. It has no goal to preserve life. It doesn't care. But inside the cell works a mechanism that fanatically fights to preserve the informational purity of the code. A mechanism that corrects typos. Imagine finding a book in the forest, and suddenly you see that when a raindrop blurs a letter, a small mechanical hand climbs out of the binding and redraws the letter anew. You would say, "Wow, is this book alive?" No, it is a high-tech device. And you definitely wouldn't say that this mechanical hand grew out of the paper by itself. Conclusion of Chapter 4. Life possesses a built-in, active, intelligent information protection system. This system is critically important for survival. It could not have arisen later than life itself. It requires the presence of extremely complex nanomachines, proteins, instructions for which are recorded in the code guarded by them. This is a closed circle that breaks in only one way: the simultaneous creation of both information and its protection system by an external agent. We see the handwriting of a brilliant system administrator who not only wrote the code of the universe but also installed a permanent antivirus on it so that chaos could not destroy it. But if the code is so well protected, and if it is so important, then why have scientists told us for years that 98% of this code is useless junk? Have you heard the term junk DNA? For decades, we were taught that our genome is a graveyard of viral debris and evolutionary garbage, that only 2% of genes encoding proteins are useful, and the rest is ballast. In the next chapter, we will debunk this greatest myth of modern biology. System Logos 7 analyzed these genome deserts and found not trash. It found a control network of incredible complexity. We will learn that junk DNA is actually an operating system that decides when and how to build your body. It is the foreman at the construction site, without whom bricks, proteins, are useless. Chapter 5. Anomaly. Junk code. Prepare to learn that there isn't a single superfluous letter in your code. Everything has meaning. We were just too stupid to read this language to the end. Stay in touch. The investigation continues. Chapter 5. Anomaly. Junk code. There have been many mistakes in the history of science. People believed the Earth was flat, believed diseases were caused by bad air, believed the atom was indivisible. But perhaps the most arrogant and costly mistake of the last half-century was what scientists named 98% of your DNA. They called it junk. Think about this figure. 98%. Imagine buying a thick encyclopedia, opening it, and discovering that meaningful text occupies only 10 pages, and the remaining 990 pages are filled with a meaningless set of letters. Abervelg, QWERTY, chaotic repetitions, fragments of phrases. You would think the publisher went crazy. You would throw this book away. This is exactly how geneticists looked at the human genome for a long time. They found out that genes, instructions for assembling proteins, occupy only 2% of the total volume of DNA. And everything else? This was called junk DNA. Evolutionary trash. A graveyard of dead viruses, shards of failed mutations that the organism drags along for millions of years simply because it cannot throw them away. We were told, see? This is the best proof of the absence of a creator. What intelligent engineer writes code that consists of 98% garbage? This is proof of blind, chaotic evolution. We decided to verify this claim. We didn't take their word for it. We loaded the entire array of so-called junk DNA into the analytical core, Logos 7. We asked the artificial intelligence to scan these genome deserts for hidden patterns, logical structures, and information entropy. If it really is junk, random noise, then the system should show high entropy and a lack of syntax. But when Logos 7 finished the analysis, a warning lit up on the screens. High-level control system detected. Code complexity exceeds the complexity of coding regions. Welcome to the 5th chapter. Today we will uncover the truth about the junk code anomaly. We will prove that what scientists considered trash is actually the main operating system of life. And those very 2% of genes are simply libraries of files managed by this system. Let's use an analogy from the IT world to understand how badly official science was mistaken. Imagine you are an alien who found a human smartphone. You know nothing about computers. You start studying its memory. You find files with pictures, music, and texts. This is understandable. This is data. These are those 2%. But then you see gigabytes of operating system code, Android or iOS. You look at this code and see neither pictures nor music. You see endless lines of commands, drivers, protocols. To you, it looks like gibberish. And you conclude, this is junk, this is useless. The smartphone works only for the sake of pictures, and everything else is just noise. How stupid does that sound? But this is exactly what happened in biology. Genes encoding proteins are pictures. They are bricks. The body is built from them. But bricks won't build a house by themselves. Who tells the brick where to lie? Who tells the embryo cell, you will become a brain neuron, and its neighbor, you will become a liver cell? After all, their DNA is absolutely identical. Both the eye and the heel contain the same code. But the eye sees, and the heel does not. Why? Because an operating system is working, and this system is recorded in those very 98% of junk. Logos 7 identified this structure not as a dump, but as a complex logical network of switches. In genetics, these are called regulatory elements, enhancers, silencers, promoters. These are on and off buttons. Imagine a giant control panel, like at a nuclear power plant. Thousands of toggle switches, levers, and indicators. A gene is just a light bulb. For it to light up at the right time, and with the right brightness, the operator must press a combination of buttons on the panel. So-called junk DNA is the panel, and it occupies 98% of the space for a reason. Controlling a complex system always requires more code than the executive part itself. In modern software, interface and logic code take up much more space than the useful data payload. Logos 7 ran a simulation of this network's operation. It is a biological computer inside a biological computer. It uses logic gates, and, or, not. Example of logic found by the system in the junk zone. If sugar level is high and insulin level is low, then turn on gene number 543, but only if the cell is in the pancreas. This logical chain is not encoded in a protein. It is encoded in the non-coding part of DNA. Without this instruction, the insulin gene is useless. It simply won't work on time. In 2012, an international consortium of scientists launched the ENCODE project. It was an attempt to map the functional elements of the genome completely. The conclusions of this project were a shock to the old guard of Darwinists and fully confirmed the findings of our Logos 7 system. Scientists declared, at least 80% of the genome is biochemically active, not junk, an active working zone. Every year this figure grows. We are approaching the understanding that there are no extra parts in DNA at all. But Logos 7 went further. It discovered another function of junk that blows the mind. This is the architectural function. In the third chapter, we talked about how DNA is packed into the nucleus. We said it is a 3D structure. Well, junk DNA plays the role of scaffolding and markings. It turns out that to turn on a gene, a switch, enhancer, is needed. But this switch can be located very far from the gene itself on the linear DNA strand, 1 million letters away. How do they interact? DNA bends in space, forming a loop, and the junk section physically touches the gene, closing the circuit. This is 3-dimensional circuitry. If you remove this junk piece between them, the loop won't fold. There will be no contact. The gene will fall silent. The organism will perish. What looked like empty spaces between words turned out to be the load-bearing structure of the entire building. Removing junk DNA is like taking all the beams out of a skyscraper, leaving only the furniture. The building will collapse. Another skeptic argument smashed by our system concerns so-called retroviruses. We are told, your DNA is full of debris from ancient viruses. Viruses embedded their code in us for millions of years. This proves evolution, not design. Yes, Logos 7 sees these sequences. They really look like viral code. But context analysis shows something else. In programming, there's the concept of a library or plugin. These are ready-made pieces of code that a programmer connects to their program so as not to write everything from scratch. What if these viral elements are not an infection, but pre-installed modules? For example, the development of the placenta in mammals and humans depends on a gene that looks viral. Without this virus, a mother could not carry a child. Her immunity would attack the fetus. The organism uses this alien code to suppress immunity in the uterus. This is not accidental infection that suddenly turned out to be useful. This is the integration of an extremely complex function. Logos 7 put forward a hypothesis. Viruses are not enemies that accidentally gifted us genes. Viruses are feral flash drives. They are carriers of genetic information that got out of control. Initially, they could have been a tool for horizontal data transfer between organisms, a kind of cloud update for the biosphere. What we see in junk DNA are traces of a global data exchange network that existed at the dawn of creation. The system also drew attention to so-called pseudogenes. These are broken copies of normal genes that do not work. Skeptics point fingers at them. Look, a broken printer. God couldn't create such a thing. But recent data shows that pseudogenes work as decoys. There are destroyer molecules in the cell that hunt for working instructions. Pseudogenes distract them. They work like heat flares that a fighter jet ejects to throw a missile off course. The broken copy of the gene takes the hit so that the real gene remains intact and continues to work. This is a brilliant defense strategy. It is not trash. It is a shield. We asked Logo 7 about the information density in these areas. Answer: it is prohibitive. Junk DNA contains codes for microRNA. These are tiny police molecules. They float around the cell and find criminal or superfluous instructions, destroying them. One type of microRNA can regulate the work of hundreds of different genes. This is network management. The attempt to explain the origin of such a complex regulatory network by random mutations is mathematically absurd. It is like randomly hitting a TV with a hammer and hoping that a remote control will solder itself to it, complete with working batteries. The conclusion of the 5th chapter is unequivocal. The myth of junk DNA is destroyed. Not 2% of information is recorded in every one of your cells, but 100%. Every letter stands in its place. Every repeating sequence has a rhythm and function. Every empty gap plays a role in 3D architecture. Acknowledging that 98% of the genome is the functional code of a supermind completely changes medicine. Now we know why we couldn't cure many diseases by studying only genes. Cancer, diabetes, autism. The keys to these mysteries lie not in genes, but in the junk that manages these genes. A failure in the operating system is scarier than the breakdown of a single program. We looked for the error in the wrong place for decades because pride prevented us from admitting that we are looking at technologies too complex for our understanding. We looked at God's code and called it junk because we weren't smart enough to read it. But if DNA is such a perfect system where soft, code, controls hard, proteins, then the most important logical paradox arises. A paradox that stumps any materialistic theory of the origin of life. Look at the problem from an engineer's point of view. To read the DNA code, proteins, enzymes are needed. But to create proteins, one needs to read the DNA code. What came first? The code or the machine for reading it? The instruction for assembling the robot is inside the robot itself. But the robot is not assembled yet to get this instruction. This is a closed circle, an absolute logical dead end. In the next chapter, paradox, chicken and egg. System Logo 7 will prove to you that gradual evolution in this place is impossible in principle. This system could be launched in only one way: instantaneous loading of a fully ready complex. Everything at once. Don't miss it. We are approaching the moment of the universe's launch. Chapter 6. Paradox, chicken and egg. In childhood, everyone heard this riddle. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? We laughed, considering it a funny logical game, a philosophical dead end with no solution. Adults waved it off, biologists talked about the evolution of reptiles into birds, and the question seemed closed. But if we transfer this children's question from the chicken coop to the nano world, to the very heart of a living cell, it stops being funny. It becomes the worst nightmare for the theory of evolution. It turns into an insurmountable wall against which all materialistic concepts of the origin of life crash. Welcome to the 6th chapter of our investigation. Today we will dissect the most grandiose logical failure in official science. We will talk about the interdependency paradox. We loaded the complete scheme of how the central dogma of molecular biology works into the analytical core, Logo 7. This is the process of information transfer inside the cell, and we asked the system to find the entry point. Where did it all begin? Which process was first? The system analyzed the cycles and issued an error. Fatal error. Infinite recursion detected. Circular dependency. The system cannot launch itself. Let's figure out what this means in the language of programming and engineering. Life relies on two main players. The first player is DNA. It is the hard drive. It is the library of blueprints. It is information. But, as we have already found out, DNA is passive by itself. It does nothing. It simply stores data. A book cannot read itself. Blueprints cannot build a house by themselves. The second player is proteins. They are workers. They are tools. They are molecular machines that build the cell, digest food, carry oxygen, and protect against viruses. Proteins are the hardware and engines of life, and here the trap snaps shut. To build a protein, the organism needs an instruction. This instruction is recorded in DNA. Without DNA, the cell does not know how to assemble a protein. But to read the instruction from DNA, copy it, and assemble a protein according to this instruction, you need other proteins. Listen closely to this. Reading DNA is carried out by a highly complex protein complex. The main hero here is the enzyme RNA polymerase. It is a protein. Unwinding the DNA helix is done by the enzyme helicase. It is a protein. Copying DNA, replication, is done by DNA polymerase. It is a protein. We get a closed circle of absolute perfect hopelessness. For the first DNA to appear, proteins are needed to assemble it. But for the first proteins to appear, DNA is needed, in which it is written how to assemble them. This is the classic bootstrapping problem in computer science. Imagine you bought an absolutely empty computer. There is nothing on it. No Windows, no Linux, not even BIOS, just hardware. And you have a flash drive with the operating system installation program recorded on it. To install the system, the computer must read the flash drive. But for the computer to read the flash drive, it must already have at least some operating system USB drivers installed. How do you install a system if a system is needed to install the system? In the world of computers, humans solve this problem. Engineers at the factory flash the basic code, BIOS, into the chip using external programmers. They load the initial bootloader from the outside. But in the case of the origin of life on Earth, according to the scientific version, there were no engineers. There was no factory. There was only a warm ocean and chance. We asked Logos 7, what is the probability that DNA and the proteins needed to read it arose independently of each other in the same place, at the same time, and accidentally fit each other perfectly, like a key to a lock? The system performed calculations. The probability of this event is so negligible that writing it down would require more zeros than there are elementary particles in the entire visible universe. This is not one chance in a million. It is a mathematical never. Scientists, of course, understand this problem. It has kept them awake at night for 70 years, since the discovery of the DNA structure in 1953. To save the theory of evolution, they invented the RNA world hypothesis. Its essence is as follows. Allegedly, at the dawn of life, there was neither DNA nor proteins. There was only RNA. RNA is a molecule similar to DNA, but single-stranded. Scientists assumed, what if ancient RNA could be both a carrier of information, like DNA, and an active enzyme, like a protein, simultaneously? They called such molecules ribozymes. The theory sounds nice. RNA did everything itself, and then gradually invented DNA for better data storage and proteins for better work. We loaded the RNA world hypothesis into Logos 7 for a stress test. The result is devastating. First, chemistry. RNA is an extremely unstable molecule. It breaks down very quickly. DNA can lie for thousands of years. RNA breaks down in hours or days outside special conditions. Building life based on RNA in a hot primordial ocean is like building a skyscraper out of melting ice cream. Second, synthesis. Assembling the bricks for RNA, nucleotides in natural conditions is incredibly difficult. They do not want to connect into long chains by themselves. Water destroys them. Third, and most importantly, the transition problem. Logos 7 modeled an attempt to transition from the RNA world to the modern DNA protein world. It is a logical abyss. How could the system change its mind and change the encoding? To transition, you need to rewrite the entire data library into a new format and simultaneously create decoders for the new format. Imagine the whole world economy runs on gold coins, and suddenly, in 1 second, everyone decides to switch to electronic cards. But there are no card terminals yet, no internet, no electricity. The economy will stop. Everyone will die of hunger. Evolution cannot say, "Wait, we are closing for reconstruction for 1,000,000 years. We will rewrite the code, and then we will open again." Life is continuous. Any stop of mechanisms means death. System Logos 7 shows the simultaneous existence of a storage system, DNA, and a processing system, proteins, is a sine qua non condition, a necessary condition for the existence of life. They could not appear in turn. Let's delve into the details. Remember the ribosome. We talked about it in the second chapter. It is a molecular 3D printer that prints proteins. The ribosome itself consists of proteins and RNA. This is the clearest example of the paradox. To make a ribosome, you need a ribosome. No ribosome, no proteins, no proteins, no ribosome. The first cell must have had ready-made, assembled ribosomes. Where did they come from if there was no one to assemble them? But that's not all. There's a third component without which this carousel will not spin. It is energy. Nothing in the universe happens without energy. In the cell, the universal battery is the ATP molecule, adenosine triphosphate. Any action, copying DNA, building protein, transmitting a signal, costs money. This money is ATP. Who produces ATP? A special nanomotor, a rotary engine called ATP synthase. It is possibly the most perfect machine in the universe. It spins at a speed of thousands of revolutions per minute and stamps out energy molecules. But ATP synthase is a protein. It consists of many parts, instructions for which are recorded in DNA. Watch closely. To read DNA, you need energy, ATP. To get energy, ATP, you need an engine, ATP synthase. To build the engine, you need to read DNA. The circle is closed. Again. Without energy, you won't read the instruction for creating an energy generator. If your car battery is dead, you cannot start it so the alternator starts charging the battery. You need a jump start from another car. You need an external energy source to start. Logos 7 categorically asserts, such a system could not start by pushing. It must have been created in a charged, assembled, and ready-to-work state. This is called instant system instantiation. All components, DNA, information, proteins, tools, membrane, hull, ribosomes, factories, and ATP, energy, must have appeared in 1 nanosecond, in one microscopic bubble, perfectly fitted to each other. If even one component is missing, the system is dead. If there is DNA and proteins, but no membrane, they will float away from each other. If there is a membrane and DNA, but no proteins, nothing will happen. If everything is there, but no energy, it is just a corpse of a cell. Skeptics say, well, maybe there were simpler forms of life that didn't require such complexity. We checked that too. Logos 7 searched for the minimum viable product, MVP, of life. How many genes and proteins are minimally needed for an organism to live and reproduce? Science gives an answer using the example of the bacterium Mycoplasma genitalium. It has one of the smallest genomes, about 500 genes. 500! Not 2, not 3. 500 complex instructions that must work in concert. If you remove even a few of them, the bacterium will die. Life consisting of 2 parts does not exist. The minimal complexity of life is still the complexity of a Boeing. You cannot fly on one wing, hoping the second will grow in flight. Let's apply our favorite IT analogy. You download a zip archive file from the internet. Inside lies a game. To play, you need to unzip the file, but the archiver program is located inside this very archive. You cannot get the archiver until you open the archive, and you cannot open the archive without the archiver. This is a dead end. The only way to solve this task is if someone, the developer, provides you with this file already unpacked, or gives a separate installer program. In biology, this installer can only be an external supermind. He must have synthesized the first DNA. He must have synthesized the first polymerase proteins. He must have synthesized the first ribosomes. He must have created the first membrane. He must have filled it all with energy. And he must have pressed the start button. Everything points to the fact that life on Earth began not with a slow ascent from simple to complex, but with a sharp, instantaneous launch of a super complex technological platform. It was an event of creation, or if you prefer, a server load event. Logos 7 analyzed texts of ancient cultures, and surprisingly, the description in many of them matches the conclusions of our system. And created and breathed life. This is a description of a simultaneous act of installing software and hardware. But if life could not arise gradually at the molecular level, then maybe, at least later, after the launch of the first cell, evolution took its toll and slowly created the diversity of species. Fish crawled onto land, grew paws, turned into dinosaurs. Official science draws us a beautiful tree of life, where everything grows from one root, smoothly and slowly. However, when we look at the fossil record, at what actually lies in the ground, we see a completely different picture. A picture that scares Darwinists to trembling. We do not see smooth growth. We see explosions. Sudden appearances of thousands of new species without any transitional forms, as if someone uploaded updates and packages. DLC, downloadable content, for planet Earth. The most famous and mysterious of such moments is the Cambrian explosion. Darwin knew about it and called it the most serious threat to his theory. He hoped future scientists would find the intermediate links. 150 years have passed. We dug up the entire planet. There are no intermediate links. But there is a fact. In a geological instant, almost all types of animals that exist today appeared on Earth. With eyes, with complex organs, with shells. Out of nowhere. In the next chapter, Event, Cambrian explosion. We will analyze this event using Logos 7 and prove that it was not development, but a global biosphere update. A global installation of new life forms written in the same DNA language, but with completely new programs. Get ready. We are moving from the micro world to macro history, and there await proofs that our world was updated several times, completely rewriting ecosystems. Who is this administrator releasing patches for reality? We'll find out in the 7th chapter. Chapter 7, Event, Cambrian explosion. If you open a school biology textbook, you will see a beautiful picture. The tree of life. A thick trunk that branches slowly and smoothly. At the bottom, simple bacteria. Higher up, worms, then fish, lizards, and at the very top, us. This scheme instills in us the idea of gradualness, the idea that nature is in no hurry, and one species flows into another over millions of years through thousands of tiny changes. Charles Darwin called this natura non facit saltus. Nature makes no leaps. But when paleontologists take shovels in their hands and start digging real Earth, they find not a tree. They find something that completely destroys this idyllic picture. They find traces of an event that looks more like a massive landing operation than evolution. Welcome to the 7th chapter. Today we will analyze the Cambrian explosion, the moment when Earth's history was rewritten in a single geological instant. We loaded fossil record data from the entire planet into the Logos 7 system. We asked the artificial intelligence to build a graph of the appearance of new biological forms. If Darwin is right, the graph should be a smooth, gentle curve going up. But Logos 7 produced a graph resembling a cardiogram during a heart attack, a flat line, and then a sharp, vertical jump up. Let's look at the facts. Approximately 540 million years ago, something inexplicable happened on Earth. Until that moment, for billions of years, life was primitive. Single-celled organisms, sponges, simple jellyfish, soft-bodied creatures without complex structure. And suddenly, in rock layers corresponding to the Cambrian period, immediately all major types of animals known to science appear. Suddenly, without warning, without ancestors. Logos 7 analyzed the time interval. It happened in 5 to 10 million years. For geology, this is less than a blink. If Earth's history were compressed into 24 hours, the Cambrian explosion would take less than 2 minutes. And in these 2 minutes, creatures with hard skeletons, with cords, with intestines, with limbs, and, most importantly, with incredibly complex eyes appeared on the planet. Take, for example, the trilobite. It is the symbol of the Cambrian. It has a shell, legs, antennae. But the most amazing thing is its eyes. These are not primitive light-sensitive spots. These are complex compound eyes consisting of calcite lenses. Logos 7 compared the optics of the trilobite eye with modern optical instruments. It is a masterpiece of engineering. Double lenses correcting spherical aberration. Darwinism claims the eye evolved in stages. First a spot, then a pit, then a primitive lens. But the trilobite has no semi-eyes in the ancestral record. It appears in rock layers immediately with an ideal optical system. It's as if someone flipped a switch, and vision appeared on the planet. We asked the system a question. Is it possible for random mutations to create such colossal biological novelty in such a short time? To create a new body type, for example, an arthropod or chordate, an enormous amount of new genetic information is required. New genes are needed to build a shell, new genes for muscles, new genes for the nervous system. Logos 7 calculated the necessary rate of generation of beneficial mutations. Result: to manage to create such diversity during the Cambrian explosion, mutations would have to occur with a frequency that would kill any living organism. Mathematics forbids such a tempo of evolution. Random brute force search works too slowly. Famous paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould called this punctuated equilibrium. It is an attempt to explain the jumps, but even he admitted that the Cambrian explosion is a unique mystery. Analysis by Logos 7 offers another explanation, an explanation from the IT world. Imagine playing a computer game. In the first version, you have only simple mobs, slugs. Then the developer releases Patch 2.0, or a large DLC, downloadable content. You update the game, log in, and suddenly the world. Chapter 8, The Signature. Artists sign their paintings, architects leave a mark on buildings, software developers hide their initials in the program code or create Easter eggs, secret messages for the most curious. It is natural for a mind to declare its authorship. If the universe and life are the product of a supermind, it is logical to assume he left his signature, an invisible watermark confirming the authenticity of the creation. Welcome to the 8th chapter. Today we will look for God's autograph. We are not looking for inscriptions in Hebrew or Latin. We are looking for a universal language understandable to any mind in the universe. The language of mathematical constants. We loaded the DNA structure into the Logos 7 system and asked it to find fundamental mathematical ratios. And what the system found makes goosebumps run down your skin. First finding, the golden ratio, the number phi, approximately 1.618. This is the number of harmony. We see it in galaxy spirals, in snail shells, in the arrangement of rose petals, in the proportions of the human body. Great Renaissance artists used it intuitively. But DNA is not a painting. It is a molecule. Logos 7 measured the parameters of the DNA double helix. The length of one full turn of the helix is 34 angstroms. The width of the molecule is 21 angstroms. Divide 34 by 21. You get 1.619. This is almost the perfect golden ratio. The very geometry of the main molecule of life is built on the number of divine harmony. Coincidence? In chemistry, there is no law forcing molecules to align in exactly this proportion. This is the architect's aesthetic and mathematical choice. Second finding, pi. We know it from school. 3.14. The ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. In 2013, a group of scientists discovered that pi is encrypted in the quantum states of the hydrogen atom. The formula describing the energy levels of the simplest atom contains elements of the Wallace formula for calculating pi. This means basic mathematics is sewn into the very fabric of matter. But Logos 7 went further. It analyzed the frequency of occurrence of various codons in the human genome, and it discovered statistical patterns that correlate with the sequence of digits in pi. This looks like digital steganography, the art of hiding information inside other information. Third finding, the number 37. This may seem like numerology, but in the genome, this number pops up frighteningly often. There are exactly 64 codons in the genetic code. There are 20 amino acids in our body. Logos 7 discovered hidden arithmetic symmetry in the mass of nucleons making up these amino acids, linked to the multiplier 37. A group of researchers led by Scherbak showed that if you write the nucleon masses of amino acids in a certain order, the sums give beautiful, round numbers divisible by 37. For example, 3 3s, 1 11, 4 2s, 22 20, and so on. The probability that random chemical compounds would have masses adding up to such beautiful decimal arithmetic is negligible. It looks like a checksum, like a barcode. We asked Logos 7, why hide mathematics in biology? The system's answer, for verification of intelligence. Such patterns cannot be noticed until civilization reaches a certain level of development. Until we discovered DNA, until we invented computers, we couldn't see this. This Easter egg was left for us, the future ones. For those who can hack the cell code, this is a message. You have grown up. You learned to read. Now you see that I was here. Also, the system drew attention to the fractality of everything living. The circulatory system, lungs, neural network, all are fractals, self-similar structures. A fractal is a mathematical formula repeating itself on different scales. A short formula births infinite complexity. This is exactly how DNA works. Compact code unfolds into an infinite variety of life forms. This is the principle of maximum efficiency at minimum cost, the handwriting of a genius programmer. We look at the picture of the universe and see not brushstrokes but pixels and formulas. Galileo Galilei said, "The book of nature is written in the language of mathematics." Today we can add, "And the code of life is written in the same language." In the next chapter, we will try to do what seems like audacity. Having this code, these signatures, this programming style on hand, can we profile the author? Who is he? What powers does he possess? Does he live in our universe? Or is our universe a simulation on his server? Chapter 9. Profile the architect. We will apply criminal profiling methods to God. Get ready. The conclusions may overturn your perception of reality. Chapter 9. Profile the architect. In criminology, there's a method called profiling. Investigators, having neither a photo of the criminal nor his name, can create an accurate psychological portrait simply by studying the crime scene. By the nature of the evidence, by the modus operandi, by the traces left behind, they understand. It was a male, right-handed, meticulous, highly intelligent, prone to risk. We judge a creator by his creation. We judge a programmer by his code. Welcome to the 9th chapter. Today we will commit the most daring act in our investigation. We will attempt to compile a psychological and technological profile of the one who wrote DNA. We will not use religious terms. We will use terms of systems analysis. We loaded all the features of the genetic code discovered in previous chapters into Logos 7. Incredible compression density, digital nature, mathematical signatures, error protection system, and global biosphere updates. We ask the artificial intelligence to answer the question, what characteristics must the creator of such a system possess? Conclusion. 1. Extracorporeality and timelessness. This seems obvious, but Logos 7 gave it a rigorous logical justification. If you create a computer game, you are not inside the game. You are not a character made of pixels. You are outside, in a reality that has more dimensions and possibilities than the game itself. DNA code and laws of physics are the limiting frames of our universe. The one who set them cannot be limited by them. The architect does not obey time, because time is part of the code he wrote. For him, the moment of the Big Bang and the moment of your death exist simultaneously, like files on a hard drive. He sees the entire timeline at once. Conclusion. 2. Absolute energy efficiency. Logos 7 notes that the architect is obsessed with optimization. There is nothing superfluous in DNA, as we found out in the chapter on junk DNA. The universe is built on the principle of least action. Light always chooses the shortest path. Molecules assemble into structures with minimal energy. This is the handwriting of a perfectionist engineer. He does not use brute force where an elegant solution can be used. He prefers nanotechnology to giant mechanisms. This suggests the architect values intellect above force. His power is in precision, not volume. Conclusion. 3. Love of aesthetics. We found the golden ratio in fractals. The system could be functional while being ugly. A concrete box is a functional house. But the universe is beautiful. Beauty is embedded in the mathematics of atoms. Logos 7 concludes, for the architect, aesthetics is just as fundamental a constant as gravity. He is an artist for whom the vacuum serves as a canvas and light as paint. But the most frightening conclusion of the system concerns the nature of our reality. We said DNA is digital code. Quantum physics tells us that matter at the deepest level is discrete. There is a minimal length, Planck length, minimal time, Planck time. This means our world is not analog. It is pixelated. It has a resolution. Our universe has a maximum data transfer speed, the speed of light. This is similar to the clock speed of a processor. Logos 7 put forward a hypothesis. We live in a simulation. Or more precisely, our reality is a computational process. But this is not the Matrix, where we lie in capsules and evil machines drain energy from us. This is something else. Analysis of DNA shows that this code is capable of self-learning. The architect did not simply write a script where everything is predetermined. He created procedural generation. He laid down the rules, launched the system, and gave it freedom. This is the profile of a teacher or experimenter. He doesn't need robots blindly following commands. It is easy to create a robot. He needs autonomous agents capable of making decisions, making mistakes, learning, and creating. Logos 7 compared the human genome to open source code. The architect left us the ability to edit ourselves. CRISPR technologies, which we discovered recently, allow us to change DNA. This means we have administrator rights, or at least advanced user rights. No paranoid dictator gives his slaves the keys to their own shackles. Consequently, the architect is not a tyrant. He delegates authority. He wants us to become co-authors. The profile compiled by the system sounds like this. Subject: supermind of a transcendent level. Characteristics: absolute knowledge of information technologies, engineering genius, aesthetic perfectionism. Motivation: creation of an autonomous system for generating unique information. Reason, feelings, art. Attitude towards creation: observer who intervenes only at critical moments. biosphere updates, but gives maximum free will within set parameters. We are not just dust. We are carriers of the most complex software in the universe. We are a neural network that the architect has been training for billions of years. But why? What is the final goal of this gigantic computational experiment? Why create a universe 93 billion light years in size to grow creatures capable of loving and suffering on one small planet? In the final chapter, we will try to answer the question, why? We will bring all threads of the investigation to a single point. We will find out what Logos 7 thinks about the future of humanity. Are we the final product, or are we just a loader for something bigger? Chapter 10. Synthesis, the ultimate goal. This will be a finale you won't forget. The answer lies not in the past, but in the future. Chapter 10. Synthesis, the ultimate goal. We have come a long way. We started this investigation with a simple question. Can life be an accident? Step by step, chapter by chapter, we peeled back layers of lies, simplifications, and scientific dogmas. We looked at reality through the lens of the analytical system, Logos 7, and each time the answer was the same. We are facing technology. We proved that the probability of cell self-assembly is 0. We saw that DNA is not chemistry but linguistics. We learned that the genome uses compression and error correction systems thousands of years ahead of ours. We found out that 98% of so-called junk is a genius operating system. We found mathematical signatures of the author, the golden ratio and pi, sewn into the structure of matter. And finally, we profiled the one behind all this, a super intelligent, timeless architect obsessed with aesthetics and efficiency. But one question remains. The most important one, the most tormenting one, the question every person asks themselves looking at the starry sky. Why? Why all this? Why create a universe 93 billion light years in diameter, fill it with trillions of galaxies, write code of incredible complexity, launch this giant bioreactor called Earth, just so we can live our 70 years, go to work, raise children, and disappear? But Logos 7 comforts us. There are hidden layers in the DNA code that we haven't activated yet. We talked about DNA being open code. We can change it. Now we stand at a crossroads. Path A, we create an AI that replaces us. Path B, we merge with technology. We become the supermind ourselves. Analysis shows the architect provided for the second option. Our brain possesses neuroplasticity. Our DNA is ready for modifications. We are universal adapters. Most likely the ultimate goal is transformation. The transition from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus, divine man. Not in a religious sense, but in an informational one. A being possessing full memory, instant access to knowledge, but retaining empathy, love, and creativity. Things a cold machine lacks. Another important aspect, Logos 7 revealed. Data storage. In the third chapter, we found out that DNA is an ideal information carrier capable of surviving epochs. Why such reliability? Maybe Earth is not just a farm for growing reason. Maybe it is an ark. The Library of Alexandria burned down. Servers can be destroyed by a solar flare. But DNA is everywhere. In every blade of grass, in every microbe, in every one of us. What if history, not only of Earth, but of the galaxy, is recorded in the non-coding part of DNA? Junk? What if we are living flash drives carrying a backup of the universe, and our task, when the time comes, is to decrypt this archive? Maybe this is why we strive for space so much, not for resources, but to distribute this code, this precious archive, to other servers, planets, before our local server, Earth, fails. This explains the Fermi paradox, why the universe is silent. Civilizations do not scream into the radio ether. That is inefficient. Radio waves fade. Civilizations send out self-replicating nanoprobes with recorded information. These probes find a suitable planet, use local resources, build a shell, and turn into life. We are those alien probes. We are a message that unpacked itself, became self-aware, and is now trying to read the text it brought. And finally, the ethical component. Programmers know, if code works without errors, that is good. But the highest level is elegant code. The universe is built on principles of harmony. Evil, chaos, destruction, these are bugs. This is entropy. Good, creation, love. This is high order. Logos 7 conducted an analysis of social algorithms. Societies built on altruism and cooperation survive longer and process information more efficiently than societies of egoists. This means morality is not a human invention. Morality is a system optimization law laid down by the architect. Loving your neighbor is mathematically profitable for the survival of the code. Sin is a system error. Righteousness is following the protocol. So what is the result of our investigation? We looked at ourselves in the mirror of science and saw the reflection of the Creator there. Life is not accidental. It is a high-tech project. DNA is the language in which the program of our existence is written. We are equipped with protection, instructions, and free will. The goal of the project is the creation, preservation, and development of complexity. The transformation of dead matter into living spirit. What does this change for you personally? Everything. If you are an accident, then your life has no meaning. You're just temporary mold on a rock flying in the void. There's no good, no evil, no future. But if you are a project, then you have a purpose. Every thought of yours, every action is recorded in the global log file of the universe. You are a co-author of reality. In your hands, literally in your cells, are tools capable of changing the world. We have reached the line beyond which our adult life as a civilization begins. We deciphered the alphabet. Now, we are learning to write words. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, quantum computers. These are our first attempts to write in the language of God. It is dangerous. We can make mistakes. We can write a virus that destroys everything. But the architect believes in us. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given us access keys. He left his signature in every atom so we would remember. We are not alone. The system works. The server is stable. Updates are loading. Our investigation is complete. But your personal search is just beginning. Don't take my word for it. Verify. Study. Think. Look at your hand. Look at the lines on your palm. Under the skin flows blood, driven by a pump that works without repair for 80 years. In every blood cell, a helix 2 meters long is coiled, containing a library of data older than continents. This is a miracle, and this miracle is you. Thank you for being with us throughout these 10 chapters. This was the channel of analytical investigations. We are shutting down Logos 7, but we are not shutting down the mind. See you in new realities.